Neural signaling involves the generation and transmission of electrical signals called action potentials. At rest, neurons maintain a negative membrane potential of negative 70 millivolts. This resting potential is maintained by the sodium-potassium pump, which actively transports 3 sodium ions out for every 2 potassium ions in. When a neuron is stimulated to threshold, an action potential is generated. The action potential begins with depolarization as voltage-gated sodium channels open and sodium ions rush into the cell. This is followed by repolarization as potassium channels open and potassium ions flow out of the cell. After a brief hyperpolarization period, the membrane potential returns to its resting state. The action potential propagates along the axon, traveling faster in myelinated neurons through saltatory conduction. At synapses, electrical signals are converted to chemical signals through a process called synaptic transmission. When an action potential reaches the presynaptic terminal, calcium channels open, allowing calcium ions to flow in. This calcium influx triggers vesicles containing neurotransmitters to fuse with the membrane and release their contents into the synaptic cleft. These neurotransmitters, like acetylcholine, cross the synaptic cleft and bind to receptors on the postsynaptic membrane. This binding can potentially trigger a new action potential in the postsynaptic neuron, continuing the neural signal transmission. Homeostasis is the maintenance of a stable internal environment within narrow limits despite external changes. The hypothalamus plays a central role in homeostasis by monitoring internal conditions and linking the nervous and endocrine systems. Negative feedback mechanisms are the primary way homeostasis is maintained. These systems counteract changes to restore set points. Blood glucose regulation is a perfect example of homeostasis through negative feedback. The pancreas releases insulin to lower glucose levels when they're high and glucagon to raise them when they're low. Thermoregulation maintains body temperature through thermoreceptors that detect temperature changes, the hypothalamus, which processes this information, and effectors like blood vessels and sweat glands that adjust body temperature. Beyond temperature and glucose regulation, the body maintains homeostasis through other critical systems. These include osmoregulation controlled by the hypothalamus through ADH, heart rate regulation via the medulla oblongata, and respiratory control centers that monitor blood carbon dioxide and oxygen levels. Disruptions in homeostatic mechanisms can lead to disease. Diabetes is a prime example where glucose regulation fails, either due to insufficient insulin production in type 1 or insulin resistance in type 2, resulting in chronically elevated blood